This meeting is being recorded.
Mhm.
All right, we'll get started. Just as a housekeeping information, our team at PromoStandards has decided that we're only going to allow the PromoStandards note-taking tool to take notes during our webinars and record sessions, and we will be posting that later on our YouTube channel. However, because we're not familiar with everyone's note-taking permissions, that's the reason why we're not going to be allowing all of the different tools to be taking video. We have some members that have some concerns about that. So we have our own that is taking notes and taking video, and the Zoom is also taking a video. So we will be posting that for members to be able to take later. But just so everyone's aware. And then we'll get started. First, I wanted to introduce our new marketing and events coordinator, Alex Griffith. You may recognize his last name because this is Erica's son, who is the standards chair and also on our board of directors. So, Alex, would you like to say hello and just introduce yourself real quick?
Hi, yeah, nice to meet everybody. As they said, I'm taking over in marketing now, as well as helping out and coordinating some of those events. Come from a little bit different of a print background. I started out in radio and worked with promotional products there, and then ended up spending some time with Staples on a team that specialized in kitting out local businesses with everything, print and promo. So this seemed like a great way to merge those two interests, coming from broadcast and getting to kind of do some media content again, as well as, in a field that I was enjoying learning more about. So, looking forward to, again, taking over in this role and making some awesome content out of everything from these meetings to up and coming events, and just generally trying to get more stuff going, to engage the promo community, on LinkedIn, Facebook, and hopefully get to know a lot of you guys better.
And we're super excited to have Alex on board. He's he's got some great things in store for PromoStandards in terms of marketing and events, and we're just glad he's going to be hands-on. So we're excited for the addition. If we could also have our volunteers who are here today who have signed up, just go ahead and introduce yourselves. We have Erica, Steve, and Sanjeev. So Erica, if you would introduce yourself and what you do with PromoStandards.
Yep. I'm Erica Griffith. I am a senior software engineer for the promotional products division of Staples. I work on our back-end ERP and some of our original PromoStandards implementations. So I've been involved in PromoStandards off and on since very early days, and I'm currently the chair of the standards committee.
And Steve?
I'm Steve Beckman. I am a full-stack developer at the specialty company. It's a small promotional company. I'm brand new here, and I'm pretty much the only developer on staff. So I'm just here to see what what these are and how I can use them.
Awesome, thank you. And what about Steve from our best practices, Casperson.
Yes. Yeah, I'm Steve Casperson. I was at Alpha Broder prior to the SNS merger, so now technically I'm part of SNS. And I was doing the PromoStandards implementation for Alpha Broder, I guess, starting 6 years ago-ish or something like that. And I've been on the best practices committee now for, I don't know, I guess about 2 years or year and a half, something like that. And a lot of stuff kind of in the pipeline for that. So, but not really ready to unveil it yet.
Awesome. Thank you. And Sanjeev, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Sanjeev Kashyap. I am from Service Provider Committee, and I work with Artwork Services USA, and we are the service provider. I am associated with PromoStandards from last 3-4 years, I guess, and I'm here to help whichever way I can contribute. I'm happy to share.
Thank you so much. We will get started with some of our questions that have been previously submitted, and if we are able to get through them all, then we can open it up for if there's anyone on this call that has some other questions they'd like to ask. The first one is how to join, which I can take this one and just share my screen really quickly. Hold on just a second. I'm not used to sharing my screen, sorry. There we go. Alrighty, can you see my screen? Yes, perfect. Okay, so how to join is you go to promostandards.org, membership application, you decide what type of membership level you would like. I highly recommend at least joining at the associate level. That gets you an email access into our Slack community where we have hundreds and hundreds of developers and who are successfully implementing PromoStandards, as well as our committees and board members and the standards developers themselves, the ones that are creating the standards and the best practices and all of that. So you can connect with them directly. That is a member's benefit. So I highly recommend that. But if you want to get more involved with adopting, that is an area that you can join at to be active or considered for a committee role and for committee volunteer. Advisory is if you would like to be part of the voting body on the standards and what becomes available, but also you could be eligible to be a board member along with some other things. So if you want, you can take a look at all of those levels and what is it comes with each one. And you would apply online, and then it goes to the MMEC from there. And depending on which level you're applying for, it will either be approved at the MMEC level, or it will then go to the board of directors for an approval from there. So that is how you join. It is really easy, and if you need help, you can always email me at admin@promostandards.org. Next, we have understanding benefits and implementation. I went over the benefits, but implementation, I don't know if we have one of our volunteers from the different committees that would be able to answer that one.
So the first benefit we gained was getting into order status and ship confirmation, just eliminating those emails and phone calls. Expediting is really focused in now on just the orders that need attention, and the rest of the orders just get updated. The customer gets their update, and life is good. So that's been the number one benefit, the easiest win out of adopting PromoStandards for us.
And I did forget to mention, but we do have a couple of board members that are also on the call. So I saw Erwin, I saw Ed, maybe, I don't know if there's anyone else, but if you're a board member and you have something you'd like to add to the conversation, you are always welcome to add more input.
As far as suppliers go, one of the suppliers could weigh in on like what they gain, because my focus is purely like from the distributor side.
Does anyone a supplier on the call that could share some of those benefits?
Yeah, so PCNA obviously is a supplier, and the benefits are basically the same as what Eric is describing. Just reducing the call volume, making sure that we get faster communications out to the customers. I would say before PromoStandards, our number one thing was email volume and just the sheer size of the call center we had to have for customers asking order status, shipping information, tracking, things along those lines. So for the customers who do integrate with PromoStandards through PCNA, they do gain all that information, which allows them to operate in a faster capacity. And obviously, we like being able to get POs faster as well, because that's an increase in business for us as a supplier.
Yeah, this is Joe Duran from Marlu, and I would add to that there's distributors out there, Staples, Geiger, others that require, if you want to be on their highest level of preferred status, that you have some kind of a program or participation in PromoStandards. So it's been a long time in coming, but we're heading in that direction, and that's a big benefit to us.
Thank you, Joe. We're glad to have you. Next on to some more distributor-focused questions. More content and open discussions around distributor challenges. Addressing a little bit on that comment, that is part of what our open office hours is for, is to get those questions ahead of time so that we can have some discussion and guidance on these calls. As far as, is there anything specific? I don't know if the person that submitted that is on this call, but is there anything specific that maybe a distributor that's on the call would like to ask?
Well, it's not my question, but I'll ask.
Go ahead.
So one of the challenges I have on the PromoStandards front is that we do all this work to make sure we have credentialing plugged in. The suppliers do loads of work to make sure they have all their credentials. They pay a ton of money. And then we found with our ERP system, we'll say like, okay, why are they not getting EPOs? And our service provider says like, oh, we haven't turned that on yet. So it's like, then we get suppliers who are like, yo, we invested in this. Like, it's hard for me to make the push as a distributor, right? I'm trying to talk to teams about, like, how do we get to remittance endpoints? How do we add additional information? How do we celebrate PromoStandards? Why do we, how do we prioritize this? But a lot of the supplier feedback that I've gotten, even at the highest level, is we invest in this, and then people don't open the floodgates. Like, something in between is stopping that from happening. So how do we solve for that? Because I feel like if the distributor is there and the supplier is there, people aren't going to continue to invest in this space unless we open the floodgate.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of suppliers that are using a third-party service provider. So it's really on them to make sure that those services are enabled and work with their service provider. I know Sanjeev just put in the chat an endpoint checker where you can see if a given supplier has an active endpoint. We've also just released a company data standard, which allows you to call out to a service and find out which endpoints a supplier supports. So to be able to programmatically determine, like, this supplier does have this endpoint available and I can reach it.
No, we're beyond that. Like, we got that. Thank you so much for that. But we're already in that spot. I'm talking about, like, our ERP system. Well, so, like, I sat with Frank from Gemline, right? We had lunch a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And he said, hey, you're not sending us EPOs. And I said, why? We're enabled with you on all our PromoStandards endpoints. We went to our ERP system service provider and said, why are they not sending EPOs? And they said, we haven't turned it on. I've done my credentialing. I've checked to make sure everything's correct on my end. They have their stuff. Steve, you look like you understand what I'm saying. But Facilis won't open the gate to send them EPOs. So we've done all of it. Like, we have a gateway where we've checked credentials. We've made sure we are on the PromoStandards website checking all the endpoints all the time. We know exactly where those are because y'all did such a good job setting it up. But if the service provider or your ERP isn't opening that, like, Spectre's not getting our EPOs. Yeah, no, you're right, Eric. That's exactly what the issue is. Like, we're we don't necessarily have resources, right? Like we're fortunate enough that I'm just nerdy enough to care about like digging into the details, but they handed it to me because no one else wants to spend the amount of time like chasing down credentialing issues. So how do we solve for like, guys, both sides have it. Why can we not?
It sounds like an issue specific to your service provider. So my example was kind of the opposite, where the supplier has a service provider, and so we're constantly dealing with them to try to get those services enabled. And it sounds like you're in much the same spot where you have a service provider who's not providing the feedback you need and addressing the issues that you bring forward.
So may I ask a question then? Are commonsku and NetSuite and whoever else are on the table, are they all universally opening EPOs across PromoStandards suppliers?
I don't know the answer.
No. Okay, so wouldn't that be a place where we'd want to tackle it?
Yes.
But as a standards organization, I don't think it is incumbent upon us to require service providers to meet our demands. I think we as an organization have really shied away from dictating to service providers and even to suppliers how you onboard services and how you go about your implementation.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the service provider work group or committee might be a good place to start having those conversations. Was that Sanjeev? Were you?
We actually don't have that committee anymore.
Oh, okay.
No, and just for the record, this is not on PromoStandards, people. My excitement is more over like, hey, I have my name on the here, and we do push our service provider really hard. But one of the things I've noticed in a lot of these rooms, and we had this discussion at the PPAI 100 dinner, we have so many opportunities, and then there's a wall dropped in the middle, right? And I'm like, I just want to get you EPOs. Like, so can I just please get you data via these incredible endpoints? Like, please, people built this brilliant program, but they're not utilizing it. And suppliers have told me they actually back their tech teams off from developing further or looking further into PromoStandards because if someone's not going to open the floodgate, why would they put the money there?
Yeah.
So this is Erwin. I'm on the board and with Halo. We don't use a service provider. We interact directly with our suppliers, but many of our suppliers themselves use service providers. But the real point is that PromoStandards requires a relationship between the distributor and the supplier. And the service provider who's sitting in the middle, they can't just enable, let's say POs for all suppliers that a particular distributor uses, right? They have to get the credentials for each individual one. So I would suspect that they're really pretty much dependent upon the distributor to say, hey, we want to set up this, the PromoStandards exchange with this supplier. And maybe you could even just give them a list of suppliers, say, here's all the ones.
Oh, they're plugged in.
Yeah.
They're all plugged in and active. They won't release the opportunity. So, I mean, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, but I'm telling you, this is the floodgate problem. They are plugged in and active. I spent months doing them, and they're plugged in and active on the tech side for all our suppliers.
So what you're saying is your service provider doesn't have PromoStandards support yet?
They will not open EPOs because they're still in development, and it sounds like this may be a common theme that both sides can be completely ready. And just from my standpoint, it might be interesting to survey the top service providers in terms of ERP or order management systems to identify how far along the endpoint trajectory have they gotten.
I see.
Yeah,
so that we can better serve both sides, right? Because how dare I push the supplier side when they're like, yo, we're there. And I've been, I have a list. It's all sitting there. It's like gold,
So we have a service provider directory on the site, but there's no detail behind that. To what extent does this service provider support PromoStandards? You want more detail into those individuals and the specifics.
I'm just thinking it might be an interesting survey to identify I can't imagine I'm the only one with this problem, right? It might be interesting to survey the service providers to understand how and where they're supporting the PromoStandards adoption, so that we're not, as distributors, like I call suppliers all the time and say, just get on PromoStandards and then call me back. But that's kind of naughty if they do all this investment and then we can't get them an EPO, right? So there's no way I can get into remittance if we can't get them an electronic purchase order. Like, that's gnarly. So it might be interesting to see if we can do a gap analysis by identifying the commonalities there, right? Like, we all have the tools. Here is how you get this adoption to work. And what are the universal themes that happen at that service provider level when you're talking about order processing? Maybe this is just my nerd soapbox, but I have to believe we're not the only people who are having this problem.
I think it's a good point to bring up. And what I'm going to do is make sure the service providers that are board members watch this section of our office hours, and maybe it will help open up a conversation on how we can proceed from here if this is a pain point and hindering adoption and hindering membership. I bet that's going to help them see this as an issue a little bit better, and then we'll see what we can get from there as far as a board and committees and community. But I think it's great to bring up, so thank you.
Thank you.
I mean,
Can I chime in a minute?
Yeah.
This is Robert. I'm with Story Kenworthy Matt Parrott Printing and Promotional Products in Iowa, and I think that I feel the same pain that you're talking about. We are utilizing Antera Advanced software as our provider that's making these connections, and it appears to be relatively easy within their system, where all I have to do is plug in the username in a key that I'm given from the vendors, and I should be able to connect. And it's like I did tons of them, loaded them in, and then come to find out, like, many of them aren't even working. I'm not getting responses. I'm not getting feedback from them. I can't submit POs to them. And so I kind of went away from selecting the ones that I wanted to connect to the most and just went to these vendors that were supposedly one source vendors, because I was told if you have a username and a password for one source, it works for all the one source vendors. So I went and tried to connect with as many of those vendors as possible, and more than half won't work. It does nothing. You can't get it to pull in products, or if you do get it to pull in products, it pulls in incorrect images and everything else. So I feel that there's a lot of growing pains on both sides that's causing some of the frustrations like that. And it's not isolated to any one particular vendor that I've seen. I mean, we've been using Antera for about 1.5 years now and had these connections in place, but still fighting to get some of them to work correctly, because it's just, you call them and you can find somebody that even knows what PromoStandards is. Sometimes you're lucky. You get handed off from one person to another. Because nobody knows what's going on, it seems like sometimes. But that's not everybody. Others I've called, and they immediately give me somebody that knows everything they need to know and everything I need to know, and boom, we fix the problem and it's done and over with. But there's a lot of growing things, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the good news is a lot of the names I've heard mentioned are board advisory members, and if not advisory members, and board members. So very active within our PromoStandards community. So I'm definitely going to be starting a group chat with a link to this portion of the video, and see if we can get some of the distributor side pain points, at least let them know that this is what's happening within the community of all of this. So I think it's great information to know, and maybe some of them that are involved with PromoStandards heavily don't know that this is a pain point. So hopefully it can help enlighten them too.
This is Steve from Essent. Suppliers that we bring up, we actually do a formal testing environment where before you can go live with POs, you have to utilize. The last thing these suppliers would want is you just getting a credential and flooding their production PO service with test POs or things that are completely wrong, and they start fulfilling them, causing a huge financial drain on whomever is going to have to pay for it. So for PO, being that is one of the more complicated along with PPC, it's probably best if you actually reach out directly to these suppliers or people that accept it, so you can go through testing and you can get it turned on. And then that both sides are proving that what they're getting is accurate before you start fulfilling purchase orders that are incorrect. And as far as dealing with different service providers in their systems, you just need to put pressure on them to see why you're not allowed to send POs, or if they're not done, or what their timelines are, in order to get it done, and make your decisions from there.
Thank you. And from that one, product ID versus item number discrepancies. Is anyone of our volunteers able to help with that one? Or any of our volunteers that are on the call can comment on product ID versus item number discrepancies.
I'm not sure I understand that one.
Let's
Just
see.
some difference between, manufacturer ID and product ID. Is it the terminology we use with the product and the part ID? I know sometimes people find that confusing.
I was thinking the same thing, product versus part, because it is confusing.
Yeah, how it is being set up, it depends on that. It's very subjective.
Yeah, and I don't know how we came up with that, that naming convention, but that was what was decided. Like, product was a manufacturer ID, part was a specific SKU, a style, color, size.
Right. Product ID, let's say using an apparel as an example, is typically identifies the style, right? A particular, like a polo shirt or a t-shirt or, various, varieties of those. And then the part ID represents, just a specific SKU, which would be in that case a specific color and size of whatever the style is. And you could apply that to other kinds of items other than apparel, even hard goods, that come in various colors. There would usually be one product ID that represents the item itself, like a mug, for example, a particular style of mug, and then different part IDs for the different colors and perhaps, different other various options that exist. And the reason for the distinction is, usually if you're imagining like a website e-commerce experience and you're searching for, products to buy, you'll search for mugs, and then you'll get the picture of the mug and you'll get to choose what colors you want and so on. But ultimately the goal of PromoStandards is to be able to build a fully configured purchase order to send to the supplier. So that needs to identify the supplier's SKUs. So when you order 500 mugs, they know exactly what color or colors you want and in what quantities. I think, at least that's that's the intent of the product ID versus the part ID. But I'm not sure if that's necessarily what the question is. The question seems kind of vague. Thank you.
Next, we have connecting with vendors. That's a little vague also. Is anyone able to walk through or tell someone how to walk through the process of connecting with vendors? I assume that's meaning credentialing, how to access that. I think every month quite frequently when someone's trying to get started with PromoStandards, they're often asking how to connect and how to get credentials and all of those things.
Yeah, and I know we had that link on the PromoStandards.org website where you can reach out to a supplier for credentialing. I know there's been some issues with that over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, it is
with people
fixed
saying,
now, but yes, there was.
yeah. So that's probably the primary method if you don't already have a contact within that organization. We normally just start with our supplier contact and then work up to find whoever it is we need to reach out to, or go through sometimes we're not quite ready to credential it. You just want to have a conversation about them to see, what they support and whether this is worth pursuing. So yeah, we just start with our procurement team and get in contact with the right person.
Thank you. It seems like every month this is another question we get asked quite a bit that's sent into our emails. Is there a lot of people are asking how to get your endpoints and connect them with Shopify. However, I am not sure that we don't have a designated process for that, but at the same time, we do have developers within our community that have successfully done that. What should someone do if that's what they're looking to do?
And I think that's another one of those where it would be nice to be able to identify services that service providers support. Like there's probably a service provider out there that has an existing solution for that and would love to be able to promote that within the community.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And if we have a service provider that does that, I am not aware of it either. So that would be great to know.
Yeah.
Supplier websites and API connections.
Sanjeev just posted a screenshot from the endpoint listing.
Oh, perfect.
He's filling the chat with great links
Thank you.
and content. So there's where to click for credentials. That's also where you can see their endpoint listings and search to see which companies support which services as suppliers.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Okay, so data reporting and quality differences. Do we have, process in for that? Data reporting and quality differences?
No. We are working through that self-certification or self-attestation process where you can go through the checklist and verify that you're following all the best practices and sort of I don't know what the final approval process is like for that, what best practices is working on. Who's here from best practices that can maybe talk about that?
That's something that we're internally trying to, we sent it all and responded from each other on the committee, but the idea is that you would, essentially, eventually the idea is that you have everybody who is listed as having endpoints, what kind of attestation they're committing to for things like data quality or, uptime or that kind of data freshness, and things of that nature. Right now, I would describe that as sort of in a draft stage, where, we want to make sure that it answers the right questions and that gives people the ability to essentially, provide the right answers that answer, what somebody's like, well, is your data any good? It's like, well, yeah, of course it's good. But it's like, well, how good is it? And it really, a lot of it's around schematic issues with the response payloads and the request payloads. Are like, do you fill in all of the required fields and all of the optional fields, or what, how many of the optional fields do you provide? Things of that nature. Because if you've been doing the integrations, you'll note that there's a lot of optional fields. And that was actually something I was going to comment on, in response to the earlier question about the integrations, around things like common SKU and stuff like that, where you have like, I'm not going to say like abusing the optionalness of the payloads, but that's where you have integration issues where somebody's like, oh, I'm, a customer, or like I'm a distributor and I need G10. I have to have a G10 value in every one of my responses for product because I internally use G10. And you have a distributor or like a supplier who's like, we don't use G10s. We're hard goods or something like that. So we don't do G10s. And so then you have a kind of this kind of mismatch between what the consumer of the promo standards is looking for versus the producer of it. And that's kind of where we're trying to get some sort of clarity, not in terms of like, name all the different fields that you provide, but just kind of around your general approach to what's your data quality, and how complete and how full is your data. So that's coming.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to some more technical and standard development questions. SOAP versus REST, current state and future roadmap.
I had a side conversation in the chat with Brian on this as well. So all the standards that have been released thus far are all in SOAP. Anything new or any major revisions coming out will be REST. So we are in the process of working on product and PPC. So we're calling it Product Data 3.0. It's still in the very early stages of just figuring out what's in the current standard that maybe doesn't make sense, what needs to be added that's missing, what needs to be re-architected to make it more efficient because it's a really giant payload. And then, of course, getting it into a JSON.
Thank you. And then I think you kind of answered that with the JSON, because the next question was REST / JSON migration and open API specs. I'm not necessarily the technical minded person, but do you think you touched on that also?
Yeah, we talked briefly at the last Tech Summit about just taking the existing standards and converting them to an open API spec. We actually demoed one, didn't get great feedback, and so we dropped it in favor of just pursuing it as each new release.
Thank you. Well, we did get through our questions that were submitted earlier. So if there's anyone on the call that maybe you have a question that wasn't addressed, or maybe you could have submitted a question after we turned them all in. So if you turned one in the last day or two, we might not have gotten to it. So is there anyone else on the call with a question?
Jessica, I'd like to know how many companies are participating in PromoStandards. Do you have any rough numbers, like how many distributors, how many suppliers?
So that is a very good question. There's so many more than are actually members. So I'm going to have to look into that and get back to you. But I mean, there's thousands of suppliers that have endpoints listed, but not all of them are members because the standards are open currently. So you don't necessarily have to be a member, but we don't really keep a running tally of how many standards are being implemented, how many suppliers have standards, how many are consuming. We don't have those numbers. But I could give you numbers in terms of membership. I could definitely get you that.
That'd be great.
Because we don't know an endpoint is out there unless they contact us and ask us to add it to the site.
So the supplier should be reaching out and saying, we've, programmed this new endpoint and wanted to make you aware of it so that you can add it to your site. Is that how that gets implemented?
I think suppliers are the ones that push to update on what standards they're offering. Is that right, Erica?
I'm not sure who sends you how we get those up on the website right now, and what the requirements are to be listed there. I know we've talked about that off and on.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, Joe, I'll chime in with a little bit of insight from Antera. We pull in our PromoStandards endpoints as a service provider based off of what's published on PromoStandards.org. So if it's not published through there, we're not dynamically pulling that data through. So we are reliant on the suppliers taking that step to get that endpoint pushed through.
Thanks, Carrie.
That's good to know.
Anyone else on the call that has a question before we let all our wonderful volunteers go? No? Well, thank you everyone for coming for our June office hours. I think this was the liveliest one yet, and lots of homework for all of us to go back and definitely for us to connect with our service provider members and see if we can get those conversations started for some of those pain points that were mentioned from distributors today. So all in all, I think it was an invaluable office hours today. So thank you, everyone, and thank you, as always, to our incredible volunteers. PromoStandards would not work without the volunteers that we have, so thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ready.